What's going on, everybody? Hope y'all doing well. Today, I'm going to be analyzing Guts from Berserk. And from a psychological lens, as always, I've seen a lot of manga review channels and all of these review channels, but they never really go in depth into why exactly people like certain characters and certain manga and the story and so forth. And I think it's a lot deeper than the surface level of, oh, this guy's like a warrior, he's strong, I like him because I want to be strong. I think that's a very surface level analysis, and it could be done much better. So, in relation to Guts, I read this Reddit post where this guy was talking about Guts, and he was saying how Guts represents like masculinity that every dude wants to aspire to, and this is why people like him and stuff like that. And I read it, I'm like, this is such a wrong interpretation of what you should be seeing from Guts, right? So first, let's take a look at this panel from the manga. Man, come on. There we go. Import this. Okay, let's see. You see this panel. This is where we are after the eclipse. And what happens is you get this random panel of Casca running away from Guts, and then Guts chases after her. You see three men assaulting her. Then afterwards, she grabs one of the swords and kills all three of the men. And then Guts gets there to save her. But instead of saving her, he also assaults her. And then I'm sitting there thinking, like, what the hell is the point of this scene, right? Well, what is the point of this scene? And if you look at the surface level, people might be like, oh, this is just showing how Guts is turning into a monster, this and that. And that's true to some degree, but it exemplifies a lot of psychological themes. And the first one is what Carl Jung would call the shadow, right? And the shadow represents the parts of yourself that you deny and don't want to accept, right? In its extremes, this scene is showing how Guts himself is a person who has no type of awareness of who he is as a person and the things that are impacting him. He kind of just naturally, instinctively does things without even analyzing any parts of who he is as a person, right? And this is a very interesting panel because you see his inner shadow kind of speaking, right? It says, you'll get closer to Griffith if you just do this. If you just do this, you'll get closer to Griffith. And what the author is trying to do and show through this drawing is that Guts is a lot like Griffith, and Guts lacks the aspects of what Griffith is in order for him to become whole as an individual and psychologically whole. And what I mean by that is Guts, after the eclipse, what he does is he denies any aspect of evil within himself, and he sees himself as purely seeking goodness. And in order for him to kill Griffith, he has to walk by the path of good, and him killing Griffith is proof that he's a good person, right? Which, in a sense, it makes sense through the journey that he's going through. But the author gives you these slight random panels of Guts kind of attacking Casca and doing other things where he's still trying to tell you that psychologically, Guts is not whole as an individual. He's still lacking the integration of the evil parts of himself and the parts of himself that he needs to recognize as being there, as well as understanding that all humans are capable of evil. It's just you have to fight on a continuous basis to combat those instincts of evil, right? And this is also really, really relevant in kind of modern contemporary times where it demonstrates the aspects of masculinity that people don't really want to accept, right? So, in a sense, after looking at this panel, you can see masculinity in two ways, right? One, you could call it a simp, and then the other one is like, let's call it Chad, right? Chad and a simp. And the author's pretty much, I mean, you can analyze this scene in various different ways, and this is kind of like a contemporary way of analyzing it. The simp is if you're a dude who just like says yes to everything, right? Yes, yes, yes. Doesn't really speak their mind, right? And so forth. A Chad, but it doesn't really take shit. What does not take shit, right? And that kind of encompasses a Chad. And what is the difference between these two? The difference between these two is this Chad right here, he's able to integrate the parts of himself that is aggressive, that is, you can quote when you take it to the extreme as being evil, right? So he's able to confront danger, fight, be aggressive, take charge, right? And do those things. And a simp, he kind of just thinks he's the good person and he has moral superiority over others because he denies the parts of himself which could be construed as evil or aggressive or bad or innate or like animalistic or primitive, things like that, right? And now that we have our understanding of this kind of modern notion of masculinity, you can go back to this scene, right? Let me pull up a different picture. Oh, okay. You can go back to this scene and see Guts and this scene as a representation of the inner masculine desires that men tend to kind of suppress or hide, right? And what I mean by that is, let's say you're in a relationship and you have aggressive tendencies, right? Maybe you want to like speak out about what you're feeling, or maybe you just want to be stern about some discussion, or you're in an argument and you want to speak your mind about how maybe stupid your partner's being, or kind of arrogant, or kind of illogical your partner's being, right? But you tend to deny these aspects of yourself because you want to keep the unity of the relationship in kind of a good term, and whatever good means to you, right? And you're maybe like an idealistic term. And what that does is it denies the parts of yourself that you see that are necessary for growth, right? It denies the aggressive tendencies that you have. It denies the tendencies that make you who you are and make you masculine, right? And by doing this, what happens is it innately comes out in one form or another, right? And the author shows this through hypersexual aggression because that's commonly what happens in male interactions, right? And if you suppress sexual desires, if you suppress the idea of evil, the idea of aggression, the idea of being masculine, the idea of being primitive in a sense, and you only focus on notions of very kind of liberal understandings of what a man should be, what tends to happen is your desires innately come out in the form of extreme, right? Whether it be sexual assault or aggressive tendencies with your family members or getting into a fight and things like that, right? So the author shows this psychological development through every single male, through this hyper exaggerated kind of scene, as well as through this extreme scene, right? So that he's trying to help the reader understand that Guts as an individual is not a perfect human being, but rather he's a very, very flawed person because of the fact that he doesn't know how to integrate the evil sides of himself and who he is as a person, right? And another aspect is you can see this very, very clearly how the author does it is because through Guts's experience of the eclipse, right? Eclipse, he gets this extreme negative feedback, which is that evil is to be fought against, evil should be deterred, and any form of evil within himself should be deterred at all costs, right? What this does is it suppresses his natural tendencies, right? Natural tendencies. This is extremely horrible writing, but it is what it is. You guys can follow through, right? He suppresses his natural tendencies, and this leads to an extreme reflection through the sexual assault, Casca, right? And the suppression comes from a place that he sees himself as nothing like Griffith. And what this does is it slowly forms a shadow aspect of himself, right? Where slowly, little by little thoughts that come of maybe sexual desire or having sexual relationships with, sexual relations with Casca, he deters these things because she's a very vulnerable person, right? I shouldn't do these things, right? And that's correct too. He shouldn't to some degree, but denying those parts of himself and seeing that as the extremes of complete evil and himself as the complete opposite, what it tends to do is it denies half of the aspect of who you are. It's kind of like the yin and yang, right? You have to have an aspect of evil in order to have an aspect of good. And you have to accept both of those things as being present within yourself in order to be psychologically whole, right? So that's what these things are saying. And going back to my main point from at the beginning of this kind of mini lecture is that a lot of people understand their liking or their attraction to Guts as being attracted to him due to his courage, due to his moral superiority, due to his combat prowess and so forth, right? But what you don't understand is that in the deepest levels and in the psychological format this manga is presenting, is that you like him for his flaws as well, because you can reflect those flaws back into yourself. There's some aspects of his life that he's not integrating into himself and who he is as a person, right? He makes mistakes of extreme acts because of this lack of integration and the lack of integrating your shadow, right? And you have to think about those levels of analysis, and then you get a deeper understanding of not only Guts, but who you are as a person and how you can reflect on yourself based on this character of Guts, right? So that's kind of my analysis. I don't know what you guys think about it, but I thought it was really important to analyze these idiosyncrasies and to kind of put like a Jungian analysis to certain characters. I think it's really important, and you get a deeper understanding of what actually the author is trying to incorporate. Because I know for a fact this was consciously implemented that not a lot of people are picking up on. They just pick up on the surface level actions of Guts, like, oh, he's killing all these people, he's a warrior, he's a Chad, you know, he's an alpha male. It is what it is. But that's not really the case. He has a lot of flaws, and one of the reasons why you like him and love him so much and love this manga so much and this anime so much is because of the flaws. And I would actually go to the extreme and say that the reason why you like it is because of the flaws, but you just don't know it because you haven't sat down and analyzed it properly, right? Yeah, that's about it for me for today. If you like the video, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Yeah, take it easy. Have a good day and subscribe.